I don't think I ever truly understood silence until that night in the storage warehouse. Silence so thick you could feel it, pressing in against your eardrums, making every small sound seem amplified and wrong. That's the first thing that struck me, before anything actually happened. I was standing in the break room, staring at the digital clock as it clicked over to 2:01 a.m. And I realized I could hear the fluorescent bulb above me humming, the scrape of my own breath, the shiver of the air conditioning cycling on. I'd volunteered for the overnight shift, thinking the overtime pay would be worth it. Everyone else, even my boss, cleared out by midnight sharp. The building was old, concrete walls, and rows of metal shelves, crammed with cardboard boxes, all arranged in endless, narrowing aisles. During the day it just looked cramped and dull, but at night the long rows faded into blackness, swallowing the light and making the whole place seem endless. I remember checking the back doors twice. Standard protocol, but I locked up extra tight. The motion lights outside flickered in the empty loading bay, casting weird, stuttering shadows that looked like things moving just out of sight. But when I went out to check, nothing was there. It must have been the wind, I thought, even though the air outside was flat and dead. For the first couple of hours I busied myself with inventory, scanning barcodes and scribbling numbers. It was boring enough to make me start talking to myself just for the company. Every once in a while, I'd hear a far-off bang or a clatter, but the building always did that. Metal shifting, pipes creaking, that sort of thing. I forced myself to ignore it. Around 2:45 a.m., the silence changed. I know that sounds weird, but it did. The hum of the lights went static, sharper, like a mosquito whining right in my ear. I started getting distracted, checking over my shoulder too often. That's when I noticed something subtle. Every time I glanced down a particular aisle, the one closest to the emergency exit, I found myself hesitating. The light there was dimmer than the rest. Not burned out, just off, somehow. Like the shadows were heavier, even though the bulb flickered on just fine. I told myself I was being paranoid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the storage racks in that aisle were somehow more crowded than before. Boxes pressed right up to the edge, as if something was hidden behind them, waiting. I tried to laugh it off. I made a point of walking down there, scanning a few barcodes, forcing myself to focus. My footsteps echoed in the cavernous space, and each echo seemed to come back a beat too late, like someone else was walking just behind me. I paused at the end of the aisle, heart thumping a little too fast. I looked over my shoulder, expecting what, exactly? Nothing was there, only the silent maze of shelves. I went back to my workstation and put on my headphones, even though the building rules said not to. I figured some music would settle my nerves. I barely got through a song before my phone beeped. Battery low, less than 10%. I hadn't realized how much I'd been using it, checking the time, playing games to stay awake. Reluctantly, I plugged it into the wall. That's when I realized the break room window, which normally looked out onto the side alley, was pitch black. No security light, no moon, just empty darkness pushing right up against the glass. For a minute, I stood there, staring into the void. I swear, I got the impression that something was on the other side, pressing back at me, waiting for me to look away. I blinked hard, tried to shake it off, and turned away, telling myself the security light must have blown. I almost went to check, almost, but the thought of stepping outside, away from the hum and the pitiful comfort of fluorescent lights, made my skin prickle. Instead, I busied myself with paperwork, pretending not to glance at the window. It was just a black square now, swallowing reflections. I kept catching movement in the glass out of the corner of my eye, but every time I looked directly, there was only my own face, pale and drawn. At 3:30, a metallic clang echoed from somewhere deep in the warehouse. Not the usual settling. This was sharper, closer, like someone had slammed their fist against a metal shelf. My pen slipped in my hand, skittering across the floor. I stared at the open office door, half expecting to see someone standing there. Nothing but darkness and the distant rows of boxes. I got up and peered out, calling a cautious, "Hello?" My voice sounded paper-thin, swallowed by the space. Nothing answered. Still, I couldn't shake the certainty that the noise hadn't come from the building itself. It felt intentional, like a signal. I told myself it was a rat, or maybe a box had fallen. But I didn't believe it. I forced myself to do a quick walk of the main aisles, flashlight in hand. The beam cut through the dusty air, jagged shadows dancing between the boxes. In the far corner by the emergency exit, I found a cardboard carton on its side, contents spilled, loose paper and packing foam scattered like bones. I crouched to pick it up. The air felt colder here, biting at my exposed fingers. As I gathered the papers, I realized the labels were blank. Every one of them. I knew these were supposed to be shipping invoices, but all I saw was empty whiteness, like the words had been wiped away. Behind me something shifted. Not loudly, just enough to raise the hairs on the back of my neck. I spun around, flashlight sweeping over shelves, catching a glint. For a split second, I thought I saw a face between two boxes. Eyes, reflective, too large, watching. My grip on the flashlight tightened until my knuckles burned. But when I looked again, there was nothing but stacked cardboard and the creeping dark. I stood frozen for a second, listening. The silence pressed in so hard it made my ears ring. I told myself it was a trick of the light, sleep deprivation, nerves, whatever. Still, I backed away, not bothering to restack the fallen box. Every step felt heavy, like my legs might give out. Back in the break room, I locked the door behind me. It was a flimsy gesture, just a push-button lock, but it made me feel a little less exposed. My phone screen glowed dimly where I'd left it charging. 3 missed notifications, but when I checked, there was nothing. No messages, no alerts, just the lock screen, and a faint, scrolling static that didn't stop even when I tried to swipe it away. I unplugged it, planning to restart, but the screen froze. The time stuck at 3:44 a.m. That was when I heard footsteps. At first, they were soft, cautious, moving somewhere out of sight in the halls. Just the suggestion of a heel clicking on concrete. I held my breath, head cocked, trying to decide if it was real or just my brain filling in the silence. The steps paused. Then, they started again, this time closer. I pressed my ear against the break room door. The footsteps stopped right outside on the other side. The thin panel vibrated, just barely. I waited, muscles locked, every instinct screaming at me to run, but I couldn't move. Then came the scraping sound, a slow, deliberate drag of something, hard against the hallway floor, back and forth, as if someone was drawing a heavy object in broad arcs just inches from where I stood. The sound lingered, uneven, almost thoughtful. I tried to tell myself it was the janitor's cart, but that made no sense. No one else was supposed to be here. And this wasn't the squeak of wheels or the clatter of tools. It was deeper, a slow grind like metal on concrete. I backed away from the door, gripping my useless phone like a talisman. The clock on the wall flicked, one of those old digital ones with red numbers. 3:44. A minute passed. Still 3:44. I stared at it, eyes darting between the frozen clock and my phone's frozen screen, feeling the bottom drop out of my stomach. The scraping in the hallway stilled. Silence pooled again, deeper now, as if the building itself was listening. My throat was dry. I forced myself to the window, thinking maybe I could signal someone outside, but the alley was still blank, too dark to see even my own reflection. I pressed my forehead to the glass. It was shockingly cold, like touching a block of ice. Breathing left a pale smudge on the pane. I tapped the glass, hoping on some level to hear an echo, proof that I hadn't slipped into some private pocket of unreality. Instead, the knock sounded muffled, swallowed by the night. I heard the break room door handle jiggle just once. A short, almost polite test. My breath caught in my throat. Then came a soft tapping, a rhythm I almost recognized. 3 short, 2 long, 3 short. I racked my brain, searching for a meaning, but my thoughts were unraveling, logic thinning out under the weight of fear. The tapping stopped. I waited, numb fingers pressed white against my useless phone. The air in the room felt denser. I could smell something now. Faint, chemical, like old paper and wet stone. My mind flashed on the blank invoices, the vanishing words. I tried to tell myself it was just mildew, but the scent twisted in my nose, strangely sweet and rotten at once. Suddenly, the overhead lights buzzed, flared painfully bright, and then snapped off. Darkness crashed in, absolute and suffocating. I scrambled for my flashlight, cursing quietly when it slipped from my grip and clattered to the tile. The crash echoed, too loud, as if the room had grown massive around me. In the blackness, every sound was magnified. I fumbled blindly, nails scraping the floor, pulse roaring in my temples. As I found the flashlight and clicked it on, the beam jumped erratically, jittering over the break room walls. The door handle turned again, this time with more force, a slow, grinding twist that stopped just short of opening. I stared, paralyzed, beam trained on the metal knob as it trembled, then stilled. A single box slid under the gap in the door, pushed from the hallway. It was one of the smaller shipping cartons, scuffed and damp. My name was written on it in thick black marker, letters bleeding at the edges as if they'd just been written. I crawled backwards instinctively, legs tangling. I wanted to scream for help, but my voice caught, useless. I don't know what possessed me, but I reached for the box. My hands shook so badly I could barely peel back the tape. Inside was only a scrap of paper, blank, except for a single set of numbers. 344. The light snapped on, blinding. The door was ajar now, though I hadn't heard it open. The hallway beyond yawned empty, flooded with harsh white light that seemed too bright, washing out all color. There were,